Hi, welcome back to a brand new video snippet from Follet, the video book. Today we're going to read the third part of chapter 18. And I can guarantee you that there is nothing that is not family friendly in this particular little part of the chapter. It's unusual, I'll say that for this book, but anybody can enjoy this part. It is a little violent, I will say that, but there's none of that hanky-panky going on, you know what I mean. So, if you're ready, sit back, relax, and enjoy. Here we go. About 2 hours before sunset, there was a knock at the door. Follet and Mary lay entwined in each other's arms and legs, drowsing. Follet said, "Yes." "It's Fobator," a voice said. "Will you be ready to leave for New Orleans in an hour?" "We'll be down before then, Fobator, thanks." They heard footsteps pad down the hallway, and Mary and Follet enjoyed one last kiss. Then they bounded out of bed, took turns in the bathroom, and threw on dark, comfortable clothes. They bounded down the stairs and met Fobator again in the kitchen. Fobator motioned them to sit on either side of him. There were three places set, each with a cup of steaming hot coffee and a porcelain dessert plate with a helping of blueberry cobbler that almost fell off the sides. Bon appetit, cher," Fobator said, and placed a large bite of the cobbler into his mouth. Follet and Mary dug in and soon cleaned their plates. Mary saw what appeared to be a swan pressed into the porcelain. Fobator noticed Mary's interest. "Yes, these are from the Meissen Swan Service, Mary. Herr von Breuer's own pieces. I've managed to keep a service for 4. Follet and Mary finished their coffee, and Fobator asked, "Can I get you anything else? If not, it's time we left." The three walked outside toward Follet's caddy. Fobator stopped and said, "I'll fly," spreading his great dark wings, "and I'll meet you in Jackson Square in an hour and a half." Mary reached to hug the Lord of Nightmares, and Follet nodded to his friend. The great winged demon rose into the air and headed northeast. Follet and Mary got into the caddy and followed as best they could. Follet drove south until he found 90. He followed that road into New Orleans proper, exited at Tulane, took a left on Base and a right on Canal, and turned left onto Chart. He then pulled the caddy to the curb in front of the Cabildo. The two got out and walked to Jackson Park. It was easy to find Fobator. He was the only tall, black-winged demon there. With his great black dog, Passanta, beside him, he was talking to old women, some creatures too strange to identify, and a group of things that seemed to change shape as they shifted from standing on one foot to another. They were cats, and then pigs, and then dogs, and then snakes, and every once in a while small white butterflies. But they changed again. Then they all wore hats. Fobator was talking to a cat. "Some people think they jive me, but I know they must be crazy. They don't see their misfortune. I guess they're just too lazy. Je suis le grand zombie. My yellow belt of choice, and I ain't afraid of no tomcat filling my brains with poison. I walk through the fire, fly through the smoke, see my enemies at the end of their rope." And the cat and his followers chanted, "Come get it. Come get it, come, come. Walk on gilded splinters." Follet continued, "I rolled out my coffin, drink poison in my chalice. Your pride begins to fade, and you all feel my malice. Put Gree-Gree on your doorstep, and soon you'll be in the gutter, melt your heart like butter, and I can make you stutter." And the cat and his fellows chanted, "Come get it, come, come. Walk on gilded splinters." Fobator spun and spread his wings, rising into the air, and as he rose above them, the Mara and the Alps and the Pasquidar and the Kayak and the old hags, and finally Fobator's faithful Passanta ran roaring to the doors of the church, which flew open as Fobator motioned them to do. Follet and Mary ran last through the great open doors into the narthex of the cathedral. They walked carefully and gasped at the blood splattered on the floor and the great columns that held up the galleries that flanked the nave. Legs and arms were strewn across the floor. A hand rested, fingers dipping into the font as blood dripped from its severed wrist. A shoe with a foot inside lay neatly on top of the kneeling bench in a pew. Mary and Follet approached the transept and found dried husks that upon closer inspection were the dried remains of men robed in black, scattered like autumn leaves. As they approached the chancel, they found 2 heads, lying on their sides, facing each other deep in the conversation of death, at the 3 marble steps that led up to the altar. In the 3 aspidal chapels that lay beside the altar, old hags were riding their victims to death, and a fat old man in a red robe screamed as Passanta raked his steel claws across the man's chest. In one of the choir stalls to the right, someone was struggling against the blackness that was one of the kayaks, making no sound. The struggles lessened after a moment and then stopped altogether. Backed up against the altar was one last red-robed exorcist holding a great brass cross. Tears washed down his cheeks, and Follet could smell that he had soiled himself. Wisps of hair that had once been combed over a bald spot almost the width of his head flew haphazardly in all directions. His eyes were wide with the madness of fear, and a thick string of drool fell from the corner of his mouth down his jaw and dripped onto his fat chest. He saw Follet and Mary and was about to say something when his eyes focused on something coming into the church from the narthex. It was Fobator. He had folded his wings when he entered the church. He walked up to the man in red, slapped the cross out of his grasp, and the robed man whimpered. "You're the last," Fobator told the man. "I will send you back with a message for your masters. Leave the dreamers in peace, or my children and my kin will find you and expunge your vileness from every land." And Fobator raised his right hand. The exorcist's mouth opened in a silent scream. Blood mixed with the tears that wet his cheeks. Slimy cords of mucus ran from a nostril. He put his hands to hold his head and howled in pain. "Go," Fobator commanded. "Return to your overlords and tell them of every death that occurred here last night and today. You will remember them all. You'll feel the pain of each one until you tell the story of each one to those who control you. And then tell them of my ultimatum. Only then will you find peace." The man spun around, still clutching his head, trying to calm the pain that raged in his mind. He stumbled toward the 3 steps down to the transept and tripped, falling on his face, breaking his nose or perhaps his jaw with a sickening crunch. He rose again. The pain or the visions in his mind were such that he walked into one of the columns. He bounced off and caromed into a pew. His keening cry was at one moment a shrieking bray, at another a mewling sob. He eventually staggered out the front door of the cathedral and off into the night, his bellowing so savage that people shut their doors and windows to eschew him, and people on the street stooped to pick up trash, garbage, bottles, sticks, or rocks to throw at him to keep him away.